Tara-Nicholle Kirk. I'm the metaphysician. Um, and I'm just, these days feeling like spending more time with you live. And I want to sort of share my real time experience of life through the lens of spiritual strategy. So that's what I'm doing. Um, I'm here on the really painful occasion of having had to put my dog down yesterday. Sumiko. So many of you know Sumiko, or know of her. She's a bit of a local celebrity in Oakland. She's a celebrity in my school of spiritual strategy. Her little paw click clacks are often in the background of the daily rituals. Um, and Sumiko was the most glamorous pug who ever did live. She was half pug and half Japanese chin. So she was like a pug bowling ball body, but on long, glamorous, sexy legs. She's like a sexy pug. And Sumiko was 16 years old, had just turned 16 years old. I got her when she was 6 weeks old. Um, she and her sister, both littermates, were bred by the same designer dog breeder, half pug, half Japanese chin. All the other dogs in the litter were fine, were healthy, and so she sold all of them. And then she brought these two to the pound because they had little birth defects, little hernias and things that didn't impact or shorten their lives at all. So I went to the San Francisco pound and I got these two little dogs, and they were 6 weeks old. And Aiko died 2 years ago, and Sumiko died yesterday. So last week, she just started to get sick, and she got sicker and sicker, faster and faster. And I want to share with you a little bit about the experience of not so much the experience of putting her down, but the experience of being with London, my 4-year-old, um, during as we put London down, or as we put Sumiko down, and London was there in the room for the whole thing, and as we processed it and how we treated it. Um, so let me just make sure all the technologies are working. They are. Okay. All right. So yesterday, overnight, Sumiko had been in the puppy hospital. And yesterday morning, I went and picked her up while London was at school. And then I went and got London. I called and made an arrangement for a mobile euthanasia vet to come over and put Sumiko down last night. And so I went and picked London up a little early from school so they could have a few last hours together. And when I and remember, we had Sumiko's sister, her little mate, died 2 years ago. So I had a little script that I came up with to talk to young children, about the death of their pet. And when I got London yesterday, I told her Sumiko's very sick, and her body, and she's not going to get better. Her body is stopping working. Her body is no longer going to be working. She is going to die. The vet's going to come over and help her die so that she doesn't have to hurt anymore, be sick anymore, be sad anymore. And as I've talked with friends and processed this, it's been an interesting observation that so many of us grew up either with parents who had very good intentions, or with our own parenting style being one where we think it's our job to soothe or comfort our children's painful emotions, or we think it's our job to make them feel better. And I don't actually think that's my job. A high priority for me in parenting London is to make sure that she retains maximum access to the full range of her emotions. My therapist talks about your emotions as a palette. Like, I want her to have access to every color on the palette, in part because I know that the emotions that are unwanted, that we do not attend to, tend to stay very active in our energies and run our lives. And on the flip side, the emotions that we can fully access have a career they want to have within us, as Dave Rico would say. There's energy they want to give us. There's direction they want to give us, right? So I always prioritize making sure that she feels really, really safe and allowed to fully express her emotions. And that's what we did. So I got the dog home from the puppy hospital. I made an appointment with the vet. I made sure we had a few hours, knowing that I had already had this experience of prepping London to put the dog down like 6 months ago. We were told that we should put her down when she had an injury. And she basically recovered from the injury before before we even could put her down. So I had talked and prepped London through this process before, and London's also, we lost a dog a couple years ago. So I just told her, Sumiko's body is in the process of stopping working. We're going to help her later today. The vet's going to come over. He's going to give her some medicine. She's going to look like she's asleep, but she's not asleep. She's going to die. And when you die, what happens when something dies is the body stops working. I don't ever personalize it like to her, you. And she won't come back. Sumiko will not come back. The vet will take her body. They will do some work to it, and they will bring it back to us in a box. And then I asked London what she wanted to do, if she wanted to come home and just snuggle with Sumiko, if she wanted to go to the park and play with Sumiko. So she wanted to go to the park. So we went to the park, and London had the full range of her emotions while she's playing with Miko at the park. She always takes Sumiko around to other people and says, "Look, this is my dog Miko. Do you want to pet her?" And she continued to do that. But she would say, "This is my dog Miko. Do you want to pet her? She's going to die today." And people were people would look at me, and I was like, yes, that is going to happen. And sometimes London would, just play with the person and play with the dog. And sometimes she would cry and howl. She would yell, "I don't want her to die." And I would say, "I don't want her to die either." And that is what's happening today, but I don't want her to die either. She would she's 4, but she's an advanced 4. So she's kind of like trying to understand energy, the difference between soul and spirit and energy and body in a, age appropriate way. And I sometimes say things to her that I know she can't cognitively grasp right now, but she does energetically grasp right now. So she's heard me talk about, how our body is one thing and our soul is another thing. And she would say, "I don't want Sumiko's soul. I want to play with her. Like, I want her to be here with me." She would say, "Are all our dogs are all the dogs we ever have gonna die?" And I would say that yes, that probably will happen. And she processes and grieves in a way that is a uniquely preschooler way to grieve that I think we can learn so much from. Where when adults grieve, we kind of want to stop the world. It's like we want everyone to see and know our grief and our pain, because it feels crazy that the world continues to go on while we're in these depths. When young children grieve, they just grieve in these little bursts. So she would cry and howl, and then she would ask for ice cream. She would cry and howl, and then she would want to get on the swings. She would scream, and then in the next moment, Sumiko would like roll over for a belly rub, and I literally have photos that I took of them 1 second apart, where one photo is London just crying, and the next frame is London just beaming with the joy at the funny thing that Sumiko was doing, right? And so we played for a while. We came home. We fed Sumiko as much shrimp as I could get into her. I gave her a little coconut milk ice cream, because that's just what we do, how we do it here. And then the vet came. And the vet was the same vet who I called 6 months ago when I was told to put Sumiko down. And he said, "I wouldn't put this dog down. I think she is actually getting better. She just had a disc problem at the time." Well, now we know that she had a much more serious problem that she wasn't going to come back from. And London's behavior while the vet was there was very antsy, and she got like in very hyperactive mode, what my friend Rebecca would almost call shark mode, where she couldn't stop moving, and she was doing flips, and she was just doing things that someone might have thought of as inappropriate. But I know, because I know London and I know what's happening, was just her working out her emotions, her trying to be in her own skin in a super painful moment. So I held Sumiko in my arms, and we gave her the medicines, and we talked to London the whole time. Showed her what, we talked to her about what was happening. It's kind of reminded me a lot of when my other dog died, and Sumiko, it was helpful that Sumiko and Aiko were able to be in the room, that Sumiko was able to be in the room with her sister's body after the spirit had gone out of it for a while, just so that they could have that moment of knowing what was happening, of closure. We don't do a thing like they used to do in the olden days, where they would just the kids go to school and then you put the dog down. Like, no, she needs to be here and see that and experience what is happening. And she got to, she could feel Sumiko before and after. She could be there and know what was happening. And it was really fascinating because the vet, who is a lovely gentleman, was like very, and really was desiring to be helpful with London. He would say things like, well, we're just going to put her to sleep. And I was like, actually, we're not putting her to sleep, because I don't need London to be afraid of sleep, to be afraid that some of us, we're going to go to sleep one night, and I don't need her to be like an insomniac because she's afraid of what will happen if she goes to sleep. So I would just say over and over again, very matter-of-factly, Sumiko's body is no longer working. Sumiko is dying. When Sumiko dies, she won't come back, but she will always love us, and you can always love her. So yes, so London was self-regulating with her, hyperactivity, and that was great. It was fine. It was okay by me. It was okay with the vet. And when Sumiko was gone, we carried her down to the vet's car. And there was just this spark of this moment with London that, I thought it would break my heart. Where she started to sing. She started to sing this little song to Sumiko. There's a Daniel Tiger song. Good night, Daniel. Good night. Good night to you. And London started to sing a little version of that for Miko. She said, bye, Miko, bye. I thought my heart would break. I can hear it now. There's a little piece. Close your tired eyes. Tomorrow will be new. Dream a dream of all of us, and remember we love you. And she just started singing this little song, and then she started to cry, and I thought my heart would break. And this is life. This is what it is, So these bursts of grief, and then we put Sumiko in the car, and she waved bye-bye to Sumiko. And she asked for some ice cream. And she asked if she could watch. We do know we don't do screen time for London. So she asked, can I watch Super Y, this little reading show? And I said, yeah, babe, you can watch Super Y. And she said, I'm so proud of you. To me, she's so proud of me that I let her watch something. And she was still having that sort of back and forth, just regulating herself, letting herself feel what she needed to feel. Super sad, then super happy. Super, I don't want Sumiko to die. Sumiko died. She would say that, but Sumiko died. Sumiko already died. She would ask, can we name our next dog Miko? And so I talked to her about, I was like, no, we can't name our next dog Miko unless the dog comes and is a Miko. We named Sumiko because she was almost all black when we got her, and Sumiko means black in Japanese. She was half Japanese, so that made sense. But I told her, whenever we get another dog, it may look like a Coco or a Bluey or another. And she started to kind of, a golden, she said, yeah. So you'll pick the name of the next dog when you see that dog. Um, and I wanted to share, I don't know, I just wanted to share that and process it out loud. Um, and I also wanted to share this kind of magical thing that happened yesterday in real time in parallel with all of that. As you know, I'm working on this process of moving to Mexico and whatever that looks like. And it's been really a fascinating process to let unfold through the lens of spiritual strategy. Um, but I am going down in like a little over a week to make a trip to a town in Mexico I've actually never been to, San Miguel de Allende. I've heard about it. It's supposed to be beautiful. Never been there. I'm taking a little more of a vacation-y trip than a plan the move trip. So I had decided that I was going to make this move, this trip to SMA. And I join anytime I go to any place, I join a bunch of the Facebook groups of the people who live in that place, so I can kind of get dialed in and know what's what in that town. So I joined this like expats in San Miguel group day before yesterday. Yesterday I come onto Facebook and actually I think like in the vet's office. And I've been let into one of these groups. And the first post I see is a woman who runs a nonprofit pet rescue in San Miguel de Allende. And she's got a post up that says, is anyone flying from San Miguel to Oakland in this date range? Because I have like 4 or 5 dogs that I need to get to new homes in Oakland. And I'm like, yo, so I don't actually live in San Miguel, but I will be flying from San Miguel to Oakland in that date range. What do you need? And she's like, basically they have the nonprofit has people who will basically get the dogs onto the plane. They have people on the other end in Oakland who will get the dogs from the plane to their new homes, but the dogs do have to be associated with someone's plane ticket. Would I be interested in that? Could they actually pay for my flight from San Miguel to Oakland if I were willing, in exchange, in consideration for accompanying these dogs back? So by the end of the day, we're having this like very full circle moment where I'm like honoring this dog, really the end of an era, because these 2 dogs, Aiko and Sumiko together, were this little, and me, and then London, were this little pack at this really incredible time in my life. And so this version of our family is over. And that same day, out of nowhere, but we know what that means, I get the gift of being able to help chauffeur, hopefully in the same regal style. That's one thing I'll say about Aiko and Miko. They were pugs. They didn't, pugs aren't that well put together physically because of humans and how they've bred them. But those dogs lived a royal life. They went places other pugs never go. They had godparents. They ate the best of everything all the days of their lives. In the 6 months since, I was first told maybe I should put Sumiko down, and then she got a reprieve, and then, she's been eating carnitas, scrambled eggs, pancakes. What does she eat? She eats shrimp. She eats pate, this lobster pate. These dogs had a wonderful life. And so I got the opportunity also yesterday to play this role in chauffeuring, hopefully kind of regally, to these 4 or 5 dogs to their new lives. And so I see Anne on Instagram is saying, and you know what will happen when you get that? Yeah, I have had this thought that I may end up getting a dog from that rescue too. But because we're in this moment of like figuring out where we're going to be, I'm going to give it a minute, but it would not be bizarre. That would be actually a perfect circle of divine order. Um, so we went through the day yesterday, I kept being reminded of this Rilke quote. I used to actually have a really hard time with accessing sadness, accessing anger, and I did years of therapy around it. And I think London is such this wonderful guru to me in that, in my desire to help her preserve full access to the full palette of her emotions, I get the blessing of being with her and experience those emotions, in real time too. So like yesterday, which was normally a day in which I would have been like very matter of fact and about the business of getting these things done, getting the logistics of this handled, I had all these moments of my own heart being just tenderized and broken in a way that's like, you know, part of a whole life. And so I was remembering back as I was watching her at the park crying and being so happy, I was remembering this Rilke quote. He said, "Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final. Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final." And so that's my wrap up on the end of an era, the 16-year regal life of Sumiko Nelson. Thanks to all, I will post a bunch of pictures from her life and from her final day. And just, keep us in your hearts. It's a super tender, tender, tender time. And that is as it should be. All right. I love y'all. I'll see you a bunch next week. I had intended to update you a bunch on the move and some other things this week, but with Sumiko and the unfolding of that, there wasn't bandwidth. But I'll see you soon. I love you. Thank you. I'm receiving your love and your light. All right. Bye, guys.